Welcome, educators. Whether you are a spreadsheet, dashboard, all things data fanatic like myself, or you break out into a cold sweat just hearing the words data meeting, it's okay. I've got you. My name is Jessica Lane, and I'm your host for this podcast, Data in Education. I'm also the founder of Data Informed Impact, where I work with schools and educators all over to get rid of some of that overwhelm and make things a little bit easier for them to make the best decisions for their students. We'll be talking about all things data culture, data literacy, and data visualization. Let's get started. Welcome to Data in Education, where today we're tackling those data meetings that feel like cage matches more than they do collaborations. I'm so excited to have Bethany Rees, a leadership coach, author of Leadership on the Rocks, and an 18-year K-12 veteran joining me today. She has seen it all from the classroom to the admin office, and she's an expert at transforming tense data talks into powerful student-centered conversations. Bethany is here to share how we can build a data culture founded on trust, not trauma, and lead our teams with clarity and purpose. All things I love to talk about. Welcome, Bethany.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I gave a very short, brief intro, but I'd love for you to go kind of through more of your background. Tell us a little bit more about how you got where you are today.
That's awesome. Well, so I spent 18 years, 20 if you don't count the maternity leaves in education. But what I would like to say is that my whole career in education was more like a roller coaster that I didn't necessarily buy a ticket to. I had planned on being the teacher, setting that classroom on fire, like changing lives. That's what I was going to do in history specifically. And I, had those plans, and God looked at my plans, laughed, and I went on a completely different adventure. So I did start in history, and I was teaching civics to ninth graders in a very small town school district in Arkansas. And then I got my master's degree in gifted and talented. And then I immediately switched to teaching pretty much K-6 over the various years and teaching all subjects. So I would literally go from teaching a third grader some algebra to helping a sixth grader with a science project, all project based learning about how to reduce CO2 emissions with scrubbers in a power plant. Like, how did I go from history to this, right? It was a whirlwind. And then 2008 came, and my husband was transferred to Houston in July, might I add. And so trying to find a job in late July as an educator who teaches history, who doesn't coach anything, I know. So I took the only job pretty much that was open, and it was called an instructional technologist, and it was serving teachers utilizing technology. So I was like, okay, I can do this. I use technology all the time. Yeah, most of the job was hardware. I had a tool belt, was
Oh
under desks,
no.
making Cat5 cable, like a complete flip from anything I'd ever done. But that's where I learned humility and service, and it was great. And I was back in a high school setting, which I enjoyed. And then from there, I moved to a junior high, and I was an instructional coach for 6 years. And those were just some of the greatest years of my life. I loved being in there serving teachers. And then I got the opportunity, a skip level promotion, to become an associate principal of curriculum and instruction, opening a brand new, beautiful 3-story high school in the district. And it was an amazing step into official leadership as an administrator. But opening a brand new building, opening a school is something you would ever want to only do once in your lifetime. I guarantee you, it was like living in a hurricane.
Yeah.
I'm so grateful for that, though. But anyway, fast forward to 2023. My son graduated high school from that said high school, and we got the opportunity to move back to Arkansas. So instead of doing all the paperwork of recertifying, coming back into the state, I just felt called to serve leaders who were in their own hurricane. And so I have stepped out, and I've started my own leadership coaching business, which is what I do now in podcasting, serving leaders who feel like they're living their own hurricane life.
Oh my goodness. What a story. Yeah, and how far away is Arkansas from Texas? How many
Uh,
states are in
well,
between?
just one, they're touching. So I was in
Oh,
Houston, so it was about an 8-hour drive and right now I'm outside of Little Rock, so I'm at the hub. Little
yeah.
Arkansas is like a square, and Little Rock's dead center of it.
Nice. I need to take a geography class, you guys.
It's all good. It's all good.
For some reason, I always think of Arkansas, and I've realized this before, actually. I've always thought of Arkansas as being a little bit further up for some reason.
Oh, yeah.
I don't I don't know why that is, but in my brain, that's how it's supposed to be. So that it wasn't crazy like across the country at least, but still a wild ride for sure. And you stepped in at with like ninth graders, which is exactly what I did. I feel like
Hmm.
that's a little bit trial by fire.
Very much.
It's a crazy time. And also something else that you said, you had talked about like switching states and switching
Hmm.
certifications. I don't know how many people have been through that process, but we need to make it so much easier.
Oh, they do. It was awful. I had to completely retest and recertify and everything when
Yeah,
I came to Texas. It was an absolute process. And then switching back, I actually looked into switching back from Texas because all of my Arkansas licenses had expired. We were in Houston for 15 years. So I went from small town Arkansas to like the city of Houston is almost 3 times bigger than the entire state of Arkansas. So it
yeah,
was a crazy jump, had to recertify. But even coming back, like it wasn't easy. And I was having to fill out all this paperwork and prove all of these different things and still take an online class to show that I am qualified. I was like, you know what? No, God's calling me to serve now. So I'm stepping
yeah.
out.
Yeah, I had to switch from Illinois to Ohio, and oh my goodness, was it a process? I
Hmm.
was like, Am I the first one that's ever done this? Like, you guys are treating me as if I'm the first person
Yeah.
who's asked to switch from Illinois
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
Ohio. And starting a new school, wow,
Hmm.
what an adventure. I was in the second year of the charter school when I first started teaching. I started there in their second year, and that was the closest I think I can ever get to starting a new school.
It is crazy to
Yeah.
literally start from scratch. Number one, you move in the building when it's not completely ready. So,
Yep. We were
the things
still
that
there as second year.
yeah, it took so long to physically have everything ready, but you're
Mhm.
hiring hundreds of staff, right? We started with a smaller group of students, but then ballooned very quickly to 4,000. So you're hiring hundreds of staff all at one time. And it was just absolute beautiful chaos of, yay, I get to start from scratch and build it the way it should be, right? It should, because we have
Mhm.
vision and goals. But then you're like, oh crap, I got to build everything from scratch. How do
Yeah.
we do this? How do we do that? How do we onboard? What nights are we hosting? How are we going to run this logistically? And so it was, I just worked with the best team ever, the most amazing team to open that. And I just feel like we went to war almost, and we are just brothers and sisters forever for life because of what we went through. Again, a
Yeah.
beautiful hurricane. I'm glad I survived.
Yeah. And now you're on the other side helping others with their hurricanes.
Absolutely.
Such a great spot to be in. So you talked a lot about these different experiences. I'm curious where's data fitting into all of those. So what are the experiences you've had?
Mm.
I really want to like hone in on data culture specifically because
Mm.
I find that's a very fascinating conversation when you've been in different schools and in different situations and I've kind of seen how it works in those situations. So I'm curious your perspective.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, I am a culture warrior. I just, my heart is bent, my lenses are tinted to always look at how is everybody getting along? How are we talking to one another? How are we engaging with one another? What do we
Yeah.
believe as a group? What do we celebrate as a group? And so that's just my natural bend in life towards that. But when it comes to data, can I just, I'm going to be honest, and I know you're having me on this podcast and we are going to talk about data, but in the beginning, like I hated it. My only, intro into data was stepping on a scale or looking at my cholesterol, which is proving the
Nope.
point that eating hamburgers is not a good way of life, right? So
But it's
it's
still
it's
really fun.
yes, data doesn't lie. That's where I learned that lesson, and neither do my genes.
Uh,
They don't lie. But specifically, that whole transformation of okay, what does data mean in education and culture? I began my career in the early 2000s. I didn't even have email my first year of teaching, which is crazy to even say. But it was No Child Left Behind, and accountability, and
Mhm.
adequate yearly progress, and all these things were coming out. And, so data and education is looking at this. And in the beginning, nobody knew what to do with it, right? Because we never dove into data before. So it was a very awkward intro into that of what
Yep.
do I do with these numbers? And what I was used to data wise was not numbers and spreadsheets. It was looking at my students' faces. That's, and so the whole arc of data really was very informal data, looking at my kids' faces. What are their faces telling me? Are they engaged? Are they getting it? Are they not? Do they still have questions? And then it went to the more, formative data, right? You're given a quiz. And the whole point of that is to say, okay, where are we at and where do I go from here? And
Mhm.
so looking at that formative data. And then with No Child Left Behind and all those things, then came the big summative data where you're just like, all right, how's everybody doing? Did everybody make progress over the year? And then you're looking at, honestly, in the beginning, it was awkward days. We got better at it towards the end of my career. But the summative data is where are the potholes? Like we've gone along this
Yeah.
road, this path, and you're just kind of looking backwards of, oh, pothole, pothole, pothole. Now, eventually that conversation shifted to, we still have these gaps. We have to address these gaps. We don't want kids to literally fall through the cracks here. So, how do we spiral back? How do we support them and fill those gaps? And then, towards the end of my career, came this beautiful interim assessment data, right? We have the benchmarks now, we have the practice state tests that everybody's kind of freaking out
Mhm.
over. And those were the broader snapshots. Teachers complained about that a lot. The district is just trying to catch which school's doing better and which one's not so they can shame us. That was kind of the attitude towards it. Or they're using it to predict kids. And so I went through culturally a whole bunch of conversations of what the heck is data in a school setting? Don't know what to do with it. To data's the bad guy. It is a firing squad and I gotcha. To then know how does it inform us as educators so that we know where to go. So I've been through the whole arc of it, I feel like.
Yeah, yeah, and I feel like a lot of people are still kind of in the middle of that. And for good reason. Like it makes sense that we're feeling defensive about it. Teaching is a it's not just a career, it's a lifestyle, right? Like, and so much of our personality and so much of our character comes through when we're teaching that it feels like a personal attack on us when we're
Mm-hmm.
not getting the scores, and that becomes public knowledge. And
Oh,
um, yeah, and I've been there, so I'm like, I feel you. But I
yes.
think you really hit it spot on, and when you talk about like the data of your student faces, and I like to put it like on a scale where it's you know, that kind of data, you're talking about that tiny data. You're talking
Mm-hmm.
about the day to day, the formative assessments, the super formative assessments of looking at I mean, that is an assessment still, looking at their
Yeah.
faces. You're still assessing them somehow and getting some kind of data, all the way up to the bigger data, not big data because that means something else in data, but that bigger data of like the state assessments or report
Mm-hmm.
card data, like, and it's when you're looking to gain momentum from using data and really start having that more like positive environment, it's so important to look at that tiny data because that's where you're going to be able to like make
Mm-hmm.
those connections between what you're doing and the impact it's having. Like you can see the
Absolutely.
look on the student's face change.
Yeah.
You can
And
see that the next day they're better at that skill.
yeah. I think, I mean, just as that point as an example of looking at people's faces and body language, that is a telltale sign of culture. Classroom
Yep.
culture of, am I teaching it in a way in which they are getting it? Do I see light bulbs or do I see just like arms crossed and, eyes closed and completely disengaged? And
Yeah.
that is your first telltale sign, environment and culture. And looking at, as we kind of shift this, what is culture, especially data culture? Like, do those two words even go together? Yes, they do. If you define the broad concept of culture, Peter Drucker, who's this like a business guru, but it still applies in education. He says that culture eats strategy for breakfast, pretty
Yep.
much. He also, I've heard quotes of breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Culture eats strategy. Um, and how you apply that is that it actually doesn't stop there. Culture eats your data for lunch and then it will chew
Hmm.
up your staff meeting for dinner. And so it's how we engage. Culture is not posters on the wall. It's not what we necessarily say, with one big vision or mission that's put on the wall and we never talk about. It is like day to day interactions. It is how do we talk to one another? What do we collectively believe? How do we engage? What do we celebrate? Oh, and here's my favorite that nobody talks about. Collectively, what common villains do we have that we fight, or what
Yeah,
common excuses do we rally around? That's a telltale sign of your culture, too. And sitting
absolutely.
in, as an instructional coach, I sit in professional learning communities, PLC meetings. Some people call them collaborative team times, whatever, lots of
Mhm.
different names. I've been at lots of locations with lots of different names. but the body language of the people in that room, telltale sign of the culture. And culture will eat that data meeting if it is not a positive culture.
Absolutely. The data culture it has to come before because I always talk about data culture, data literacy, and data visualization. That data culture is the foundation. If you don't have that positive environment and the feel good aspect around the
Mhm.
data, if everyone's feeling defensive, it's not going anywhere. So I'm curious because like I have an ideal like positive data culture in my brain, but I'm curious what that would look like or what you've seen it look like from your
Yeah.
experience.
So I love actually kind of going the opposite way of defining something by saying what it's not first.
Yes. Yep.
So, if you're thinking about what is a positive data culture, what does it look like? Let me tell you what it doesn't look like first. It doesn't look like, I've heard you say the word defensive a couple of times already.
Hmm.
When teachers are defensive, that's really something called image management. I want to control the narrative and the conversation so that I look good. I never want to look bad. And then add to that a spirit of competition where it's now not us together working towards the same goal. It's me versus you. I want to look better than you. I want to blow out your candle so mine shines brighter. Add those two things. That is a negative culture. That's what you don't want. And yet, so often, if you listen to the words being said in a collaborative team where they're talking about data, you hear the defensiveness, the image management, and the competition. You can just see it. You can almost taste it and smell it.
Right.
And you've got to shift. You got to shift from self-protection to student-centered reflection. You got to make the shift. So, I'm going to say something and I hope people hear me correctly. Your job as a leader when it comes to data culture is to make shift happen. Do I need to say that slower so we hear it right?
I say you say it faster. I don't
There you go. Leaders
know.
make shift happen. That's your
Better.
job, right? Stop making data as a weapon in the culture and it needs to start being the roadmap. Make that shift. So now that we've said what it's not, let's talk about what it is. It is, not the eye rolls. It's not, all of those things. So it's trust, it's curiosity, it's clarity. Those are the outcomes of what a positive data culture looks like. So let me say those three again: trust, curiosity, and then the clarity that comes with that. Without trust, without us saying, I've got your back, you've got mine, we're in this together. If you don't have that, and that's what a good
Yep.
data culture looks like, then what you have is a gotcha culture,
Yep.
right? We don't want that. And without curiosity, without asking questions and looking from different perspectives, what it becomes is, imagine like a wallpaper where everybody sees it but nobody pays attention to the pattern on it. You have no idea.
Yep.
You have no idea what image is actually in the wallpaper. And then you have to have trust. Trust is just the foundation for any relationship, any team, any organization.
Yep.
Patrick Lencioni does a ton of work in the five dysfunctions of a team, talking about trust and what happens when you don't have it. But then you've also got to have the clarity piece. Without clarity, it's just noise. And here's
Yep.
what we have to get to is you can look at numbers, but numbers it's just information. Build the culture of being curious to say, what is this information really telling us? So that it moves from just facts to some insight, and then from insight to actual wisdom that I can now apply in multiple situations. You don't get that unless you have that clarity, curiosity, and trust to do all those things. So the first thing I would say is defining what a healthy culture looks like. I'm going to look at body language of the people in the room.
Yep.
What kind of body language do we have of how everybody's engaging? And then what's the language? What kind of questions are we asking? And if it's a curious, set of questions, if it's people like, tell me more, where walls are coming down, people are leaning in, that's a healthy data culture. And it's pretty much moving from a mirror of failure conversation to a flashlight for solutions conversation.
Oh, I love
That's
that.
what again,
Hmm.
leaders make shift happen in this. So that's ultimately walking around all of that. What it is trust, curiosity, and clarity.
Yeah. I use six pillars for data culture, and I feel like even with those three brought all of it in. There's, the trust, the psychological safety, which is another kind of
Mhm.
side aspect of trust. There's collaboration, building capacity, the leadership, did I say six? I don't remember which one I left out, but there's another one. I'm still stuck on your clarity, curiosity, and what I now I can't
Trust.
remember yours, and trust, the
Mm,
biggest one. Um, uh, cool. So when we think about like how to make that happen, specifically within data meetings, what does that look like? How do you make sure that you are structuring them in a way that helps
mm,
you build those relationships, build that trust within your team, as opposed to getting that uncomfortable body language and
mhm.
the defensive questions and statements that we
Yeah.
often hear?
That's such a big question. I will do my best to simplify all the things swimming in my head right now. Number
Yeah.
one, culture has to start outside of the data conversation. It needs to start with all the other things, and it will bleed into and then build your data, conversations and your data culture. How do you even welcome your staff onto campus? How do you engage with them? Now, again, I'm doing this from a leadership perspective. And whenever I say leadership is influence. So I could be talking to the team lead, I could be talking to, a department chair, an instructional coach, administrator, whatever, or just the teacher that's the veteran teacher that, man, everybody looks to you for an answer because you have influence. I'm not talking title when I say leader, but how do you engage with other people outside the classroom? Are you getting to know them? Are you sharing, stories? Are you sharing wins? Are you encouraging one another? Again, what kind of language are you using? What kind of beliefs are y'all commonly rallying around? And what do you celebrate? That all happens outside of the data conversation,
Yeah.
but it will definitely build and bleed into. So let's start there. So I want to have some story time, if you don't mind. I have two stories
Yeah.
of data conversations gone wrong. And then I'll talk about some that have gone right.
Yes.
Again, I think some of the best ways to define things is saying what they're not. So, as an instructional coach, I also have a caveat I need to tell you about at this school that I was at. I was at a junior high. I had 5 principals in 6 years. Let me say that
Yeah.
again. You did
Hmm.
not mishear me. 5 principals in 6 years. Um, and there was just a constant rotating door for several
Hmm.
reasons. But the culture was already kind of broken. The identity of who are we, what do we believe, how do we relate together wasn't really there. And so I'm facilitating this one meeting. It's math, and we're looking at data, and we're trying to use the data in order to decide how are we going to teach the next unit. What are we going to spiral back with content? Because math so builds on top of each other.
Yep.
And so you can't just leave the pothole, right? Because you're driving in circles. It's like the racetrack in math. You're going to come around to it again eventually.
And
Like
it
fill the
feels like it
pothole.
too.
Yeah,
That's what
you
I
got to fill the
taught.
pothole. So we're having this conversation, and these two teachers are just they're just trying to one up each other in ideas and in defense of the data. And I'm trying to de-escalate it. And I'm young in my leadership learning. And what eventually happened is a gentleman stood up and called another lady teacher the B word. Well, you're just being a little B.
Oh my
And then she stood up and she reciprocated that. And I had never been in that kind of conflict. I've been in some conflict, but not that kind of conflict. And I stood up and said, all right, this is getting too emotional, too personal. This meeting is over. Please, everybody go back to your classrooms. And then I followed up individually, immediately, but individually with each teacher talking about professionalism. And they both like, I know, Bethany. But all right, so that group did not have the right culture. They were not, they
God. Right.
didn't feel safe. They didn't feel vulnerable. They felt like they needed to be aggressive and attack. It was a
Yeah.
status thing. Then I want to tell you about a meeting, and it was the entire school. It was before school started, and we were looking at our test data. What is the big letter that we're going to get from the state on how we're doing? We had just received those, letters, and the principal wanted me to facilitate it, not him. He said, you have relationships with these teachers. I'm new. Again, he's one of the 5 in 6 years.
Hmm.
You facilitate that. And I got up and I said, let's take a look at this data. This is going to tell us a story. And so let's talk about what the story is. And the very first teacher, because the first people that speak up are going to be your talkers, fast thinkers. The very first teacher that started talking started making excuses about the test and being very defensive about all the reasons why it didn't truly reflect her and her students. And this principal, who was new, he had been there, he came in halfway through the year, so he'd been there since January. So we'd had him for a semester. He got so frustrated with her response that he stood up, yelled, and said, "You're not looking at it right." And then he just stormed out the door, slammed the door, and everybody in the school is just like, "Ugh." I mean, we couldn't even
Goodness.
breathe. Like that's how that data meeting ended. And
Yeah.
I learned a lesson from that. You can spend, he was with us for like, I don't know, 8 or 9 months at that point. You can spend that time trying to prove you're a good leader, but you can lose it in 30 seconds. And he did. He threw a toddler fit and lost it in 30 seconds. And so there's a fine line between accountability and conflict, of pushing someone. So you have to step into that. And we again, we talked about trust, and then we talked about clarity and curiosity and all those things. And so my advice to anybody is to step into those conversations, first build the culture outside, and then as it goes into data conversations, always start with a positive. Start with a celebration,
Mhm.
please. That sets the tone for the rest of the conversation where everybody kind of puts down their shields and their swords and is like, "Yeah, we did something right."
Mhm.
What did you do that was good? It changes it from an "I gotcha," a firing squad, to that flashlight of, "Hey, yeah, we did that
Yeah.
well." So step number one, celebrate something. And then step number two, I would say shift the language. You can start with a norm for the meeting. Norms are so good of setting the tone of this is what we do and this is what we don't do. And so, if you even before the meeting have a norm where we don't use accusatory language, we use curious language.
Mhm.
Imagine how that's going to change everything, right? So now I can step in instead of saying accusatory, "Why are your scores low?" I can step
Mhm.
in with like that curiosity and saying, "What are our kids showing us here?" I mean, that's a different
Yeah.
question.
Yeah.
Again, it makes people drop the shields, drop the swords, lean in. So again, one, start with celebration. Two, shift the language from accusatory or defensive to curiosity. Set that as a norm. And then I think third is shared ownership. It should never be my kids, your kids. It's always our kids, us
Mhm.
together. I can't tell you how many times I've sat in a meeting where the special ed teacher is, "Well, you can't compare my data to their data." I'm not comparing data,
Mhm.
first of all. I understand you have a different population. We're looking for progress, we're looking for growth, and we're still looking for potholes that we need to come back and fill. And so let's shift that, right? But also shared ownership. Your kids are our kids. All
Yeah.
means all. That was what my district said all the time. All means all.
Yep.
It's our kids. So those are like the three things I could think of how do you develop that culture is celebrate, shift the language from accusatory to curious, and then have shared ownership. And that will really help change your data conversations.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think a lot of that shared ownership comes from like building those action plans with that data and working on those things together. Um, and I think sometimes too, because I've been in the second principal, your second story, that principal situation before. I did not I didn't shout anything and walk out the door, thank goodness. That probably wouldn't have went so well for me either, but I remember having those feelings where it's like, oh, why are we talking about everything else? Like, let's
Mm-hmm.
focus on what we can see. And I think so much of that is like we push this data so hard that sometimes teachers feel like we are saying that the data is the only thing that matters and that it tells all, essentially. The data tells all. But we know as educators,
Mm-hmm.
if we take a step back, we all know the data doesn't tell all. There's
Mm-hmm.
so much additional context there, whether it's the fact that you are teaching a different population, or maybe it's you're looking at a particular student who was out because of illness for an extended amount of time. There's a
Mm-hmm.
ton of additional data, or a ton of it, well, it is kind of data, it's qualitative data, ton of additional context there that
Mm-hmm.
sometimes goes unsaid. And if you're walking through these meetings with the attitude of, we don't need to talk about that stuff, we need to talk about the data, it festers,
Yeah.
right? And that's when you start seeing that body language and
Mm-hmm.
start hearing that huffing and puffing and So I've actually done this before, and I've talked about this a few times on the podcast, where like at the beginning, in addition to like looking at celebrations, also just saying, okay, what do we not see on here? Let's
Oh,
make a
that's a good
list.
idea.
Let's get it all out of our system essentially so that we all are on the same page and we know the additional context and we can take that into consideration while we're creating these action plans or looking at this data and giving
Hmm.
them a chance to just get it out of them because you're right, it's such a hard it's hard for the leader who's leading that meeting to ignore it, and it's hard for the
Yes,
staff to ignore it. So
absolutely.
just like go ahead.
I was going to say there's a principle in that, and it's one that I've come to always follow, and it's always name the elephant. In every
I was just
room
gonna
you
say
sit
the
in,
elephant in the room.
every meeting you're in, there's an elephant there. Name
Yeah.
it. When you name
Yes.
the elephant, it actually shrinks. If you don't name it, it gets larger and it's
Yes.
taking up so much space that people are just like feeling cramped and like, I can't do anything else because I can't
Yeah.
concentrate because the elephant's so big and pushing on me. Name the elephant always. That's how you shrink it.
Oh my goodness, that's so funny. I was literally going to say the elephant in the room. You took the words right out of my mouth. That's hilarious. Okay, I want to talk about your leadership on the rocks framework, and I want you to go through it with a little bit more of like a data lens and kind of
Oh, yeah.
tell us how that goes.
Absolutely. So, my whole concept of what I learned in leadership is, and I'm a lover of self help, podcast, reading books, and I was
Me
always
too.
looking for the right system. Just tell me the 3 steps, the 10 steps, the 12 steps that I need to do and implement, and I'll get it done. And what I came to find out is there is no perfect system out there, right? The challenges are going to continue to go. I call it navigating a wilderness. You're always going to have a wilderness in front of you. It's going to be a challenge, an unknown, a problem, a conflict, a constraint. And so looking at data is there's always going to be a story that it's telling you. There are some good parts that you can celebrate, but there's some wilderness that you're like, I don't even know where to go with this. What do I do with this? So let's just call that a wilderness. And so in my book and in my just concept is you have to learn the skills of how to navigate the wilderness. And I call it having the body of leadership. And this is not necessarily a framework. I mean, I could call it that, but it's more of a honing skills to navigate. That's what it is. And so I want you to think about the body of leadership. In the body of leadership, let me just name the 4 parts first. You have the head of leadership, and it's all about how you think about whatever it is in front of you. So in this case, the data in front of you and your mindset. So the head of leadership is your mindset. How do I think about it? The second part is your heart. The heart of leadership is the relationship piece. It's how do I connect to the people involved in this? And here with data, it's your kids, but it's also the teachers that you're collaborating with, right? And so the heart is how do I connect it? And then you have the hands of leadership, and it's all about execution. It's how do I get things done? The whole point of data is to again gain facts, knowledge, turn them into insight, and then change that to wisdom so you have action. You have to do something with it. You have to take action forward to
Nope.
make progress. And so that's the hands of leadership is all about execution and action. Do it. And then the fourth part is the guts of leadership. The guts of leadership is about accountability and it's what I call like owning it. How do I look at all the things and say, okay, I need to own this. I need to get better in this area, but also how can I support others so that they can have growth too? So accountability. So how do we put this into the data set? We have the head, mindset, the heart, relationships, the hands, execution, and the guts, accountability. Let's start with the head, and we can go deepest into the head. Looking at data, we already talked about it. If I have the lens of defensiveness, image management, and competition, all the data is skewed, period. It's going to be invalid. I'm going to argue against it, and I'm not showing up with the right lens. A mindset is a lens a perspective that you operate through. It helps you navigate. Think about GPS. If you don't have your navigation settings right, you're not going to get to the location you need to get to. And you can adjust it. So, first question you have to ask yourself is how am I thinking about this? The head of leadership. What perspective do I have? Do I need to change perspective? Do I need to ask other people for their perspective? Check your head, check your thinking. So, the second part of that is going to be the heart of leadership. And again, that is relationship. But what builds relationships? Communication. So, how am I talking about this data? I got to stay open. I got to stay curious. I got to stay empathetic. What kind of questions am I asking? it's very, very important that I stay empathetic and curious so that I'm asking the right questions of the data. Um, and it's really communication is about connecting people to people first and then people to the message second. So think about what data tells
Yes.
you. Data is telling you a story, it's telling you something. So, first, with my communication, connect the people to people in the room on that data conversation. And then we can connect people to the message. What's the data actually saying? It is a diagnostic tool for growth, but I can't use the tool if my head's not right and my heart's not in the right place of working with others because we're both using the tool together.
Yeah.
Now the third piece is the hands. The hands is all about execution, right? It's action is now required, and so you've got to take the spreadsheet and turn it into a story. What's the story saying? And that does take skill set. If you're a brand new baby teacher, first year, first 3 years, that's a skill set you've got to learn, and you don't have it yet.
Yeah.
It's okay. Give yourself grace in that moment. If you're a veteran teacher and you're so used to doing things one way, you have to recognize that too of what's the story saying and what am I going to do in response? Always ask the question, what's it saying and what action am I taking on it? That's the hands of leadership. And then you have, again, the guts, taking ownership. You're not the perfect teacher. Don't fight for the image to be a perfect teacher. It is
Right.
always about progress. It is not about perfection. And so own that. What can you learn from it? Focus on growth. That's true accountability. I think that's where you kind of end. What
Yeah.
this hurts, this data hurts a little bit here, but what's my next step? And then go. So there you go. Quick recap of the entire body so everybody gets it. I'm a teacher. You got to have like the process. So if you're watching this visually, I'm doing hand motions with it. The head of leadership, how do I think it? The heart of leadership, how do I connect it? The hands of leadership, how do I do it? And then the guts of leadership, how do I own it? There you go. Because it's all connected, always.
Oh my goodness, I love it so much. And I think it's spot on with everything I talk about in terms of data and how to be a leader through using data with your schools and all of the different aspects. I was kind of hoping for a feat of leadership or a feat of what are we stepping on? No, I'm just kidding.
I stop at the guts. If I go too long, if you have more than 3 or 4 steps, people get lost, right? So I had to cut it at 4.
I just had to make it weird.
I love it.
Okay. Okay, perfect. Well, thank you so much for taking us through that because there's so much knowledge there that we are going to turn into wisdom by acting on it. So from here, how can our listeners get in touch with you?
Well, the easiest way is leadershipontherocks.com. It's like a campfire. It's where I hang out. It's where all my leadership tools hang out. And it's where I'm making s'mores to give you. So you can go to
Yum.
leadershipontherocks.com. You can also grab my book, Leadership on the Rocks. It's available on Amazon. And it really is, it walks you through this entire thing of how to navigate the wilderness that you're in. And you can turn that concept into anything, whether it's data, whether it's leadership at work, whether it's leadership in the home. I mean, it applies to all
Yeah.
of it. It's a universal principle. Um, but if you like your leadership lessons shaken and not stirred, you can also find me on my Leadership on the Rocks podcast. There's a little whiskey glass emblem on that. So, Leadership on the Rocks podcast. And I'm also on all the socials except TikTok. I'm not there, but I'm most active on LinkedIn under Bethany Rees. But I do have also Leadership on the Rocks for LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. But again, you can connect to all those things if you just go to the website, leadershipontherocks.com.
Perfect. Awesome. And I do have a link here for something that I'm going to put in the show notes. Do you want to explain what that is?
Absolutely. So I love freebies. I used to be an ultimate couponer. I love free stuff. So I love giving away free stuff. There's so many obstacles that you go through, whether you are leading teams and then now you have conflict. Oh no, how do I navigate the conflict? If you're having meetings and they just absolutely suck, how do I fix that? If just need a survival checklist, like I went through the four body parts of leadership. If you just want a survival checklist, all of that is available at leadershipontherocks.com/free. And you're going to get all of those resources. Pick the ones that you need most. But leadershipontherocks.com/free. And you can get access to all of my freebies.
Oh, I love it so much. Okay, well, thank you so much for coming and chatting with me all about data culture, Bethany. It's been such a good conversation.
Jessica, thank you so much for hosting me. It's been fabulous. And thank you for the work you're doing. I mean, data is really hard for a lot of people, and you're making it easy and applicable because it's so important. So thank you for the work you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. All right, have a great rest of your day.
Y'all too. Bye.
Well, my friend, did you enjoy it? I'm really hoping the answer is yes. And like every other podcast out there, I'm going to ask you for some big favors. Can you please make sure that you're subscribed? You don't want to miss the next episode, I promise. And then if you could leave a review, that'd be awesome too. If you're on YouTube, by the way, there's this great thing that you can do where you just like go to the box underneath the video and type in your thoughts, ideas, wishes, hopes, dreams, and hit comment. And it shows up under the video. It is public, just a warning. But I'd really love for you to do that. Share with me. What did you think about the episode? Or what are your dreams in life? It's okay. You can really leave any kind of comment. And I'll do my best to respond. Above all else, I appreciate you listening, and I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day.